Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of this show. And if you're new to this podcast, go check out our archives because we've got all kinds of great interviews with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from a range of companies. Check out Netflix, Kinko's, YPO, Activation Wizard, Lending Tree, EO. Lots of different great episodes for you to check out there. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. My guest here today is Simon Chappuzeau. There we go. He is the founder and CEO of Storylux, which is a company that implements marketing strategies with a focus on LinkedIn, primarily for business coaches and smaller companies. So if you have any interest in getting more mileage out of LinkedIn, doing it more effectively, then I know that this is going to be valuable for you because we're really going to dive in to that. He is also the host of the How I Went Viral podcast, where he breaks down viral posts on LinkedIn and why they did so well and interviews people that created them. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25, my company where we help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcast and content marketing. And you can learn all about what we do at rise25.com. All right, Simon, pleasure to have you here. We've known each other for a while, and you've got a interesting background. I love to ask people about how entrepreneurial they were as a kid. You grew up with a family that was very artistic. Your parents are musicians, and so you're taught to play musical instruments as a kid, which, reflecting on it, given what you do now, which is helping people to tell better stories using the platform of LinkedIn, there's definitely a creative element to it. How much do you think that background, being raised not in an entrepreneurial household, not in a business household, but in a creative background, creative household, affects the work that you do now?
Yeah. Hey, John, thanks for having me. And great question. I'm asking that myself. So there's definitely, my world growing up was all about music and being artistic, and the whole notion of making money and sort of trying to build teams was something that was very foreign to me and my family. And so when I started out growing up, starting a business or starting in life, all I thought about was doing something creative. And all I could think of that was not music, because I didn't want to do music, but something artistic. I ended up doing film. And because film can be a very artistic medium, but can also be very commercial. And so that's how I made a decision to go into film and started script development, which, as I had to find out then, was a very systematic, artistic, but really more almost scientific method of developing scripts and helping authors to do that.
Yeah, actually, one of my first jobs after college, right as I wrapped up college, was doing script coverage, as they call it, reviewing scripts that hadn't been produced yet, and writing basically a one-page summary for the great Polly Platt, who won an Academy Award for broadcast news, was a really impressive producer at the time. And it was really interesting reading scripts and kind of giving feedback. But you're right, there is kind of a structure. There's a formula to it, which of course is similar to, would you say that, LinkedIn posts can have a formula to them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so funny. I started the same way, reading scripts for producers and writing this one-page report. So I think we both know what we did. Being able to see the structure in the script helps to understand whether it's any good and whether it could work on the screen. And it's something that I found you also see in good LinkedIn posts. And you can really see a structure that makes it easy for the reader to read the post and makes it easy for the moviegoer to follow the story in the film theater.
Now, how did you grow up in Germany? How did you end up at UCLA studying film scripts? Because that's the UCs tend to be focus on, I think 90% or something are in-state people who are California residents. How did you end up going all the way to UCLA?
Well, good question. I think at the time it was the only place in the world where you could actually study script development. And there was no other place, maybe New York, but in Europe, definitely film was seen as a very artistic thing. And it was more like the director would come up with a big vision and probably write the script. But nobody was thinking about doing that in a very systematic way to analyze and sort of try to target a film for a specific audience. That is something that was developed in the US. And you see the film industry in the US is much more commercialized, much more structured. And in order to do that, you need to have these tools. And so back then, the only place to actually learn about that was going to UCLA or USC. And that's how I ended up going there, because I figured it's the only place where I could actually learn about script editing.
It's interesting to me, careers that kind of, or individuals who in their career, they find something they're passionate about, and then it takes a little bit of a roundabout way of getting back to the original thing that they're passionate about, or monetizing the thing that they're passionate about. Like, for example, my father was in journalism, was in TV news. We grew up around that. We grew around media. He did actually film reviews on television. So I was around media a lot. And then I did radio in college. So I was interested in that. I did newspapers. So I was interested in that. Now, what we do now with helping companies start podcasts is in the media world. Generally, it's a new landscape, but it's still in the media world. It took a while to get back to that, right? So, with you, there's a similarity in the sense that you knew you were interested in something creative. You're interested in film development. There's probably something very analytical and creative about your mind where you can kind of break down the structure. And now, years later, you're back doing the same thing, understanding the structure of something. It's a different piece of content, and then advising clients on it. But you had a roundabout way of getting there.
No, exactly. I feel like I went full circle, came back to what I did in the beginning 20, 25 years ago. And it's so interesting because you come to understand more about yourself, what you like and what you're good at. And I remember back in the days when I started to work in the industry, it always sounds very glamorous and everybody was like, oh, it's so cool, you're in film. But seriously, you didn't get a lot of money. It was a very competitive market because you have a lot of people who want to be in film, and so it was no fun. And that was why I left the industry after a couple of years, because back then I didn't see a way how I could make a decent living in the industry. And but I always loved looking at a story and trying to see how that story might resonate with a certain audience. And there were just stories, and you might have made the same experience, some scripts that just sort of grabbed you and sort of like were enthralled in the story and you loved it, and then others that sort of just left you cold. And I always try to understand, why is that? Why do certain stories work better with me or a certain audience? And coming full circle 25 years into the future to today, that is basically what we do on LinkedIn. I mean, we try to help the owners of LinkedIn profiles to understand how what they post or what they want to post, how that potentially resonates with a certain audience. And there are certain principles at work. If you talk about certain values that people hold high and love, that is something that will resonate with a certain audience that shares these values. So we try to help our clients to think about that, to become self-aware, and to also see the market if you will, of readers that are trying to engage. And it's a very similar thing to film. But the cool thing is, with film, you wait years until you get the results at the box office. And between the script that you read and the film on the screen, so many people fiddled with the whole thing. It's not recognizable. But with LinkedIn, you write it today, and tomorrow you know whether it was a box office hit or not. So it's much more rewarding.
Good way of putting it. I want to ask about how you ended up from film development at UCLA to corporate events business for many years. But before I get to that, one more anecdote about the world of screenwriting and scripts and stuff like that. When I was trying to break into this world, this is before I went and got a job at the White House in the Clinton years. I was in Hollywood, and there was this script that had sold for, it was like $1 million or $1.5 million. Brand new writer. It got a lot of attention because the title of it was Untitled Teenage Sex Comedy that can be made for under $10 million that readers will probably hate, but I think you will love. And that was literally on the cover page of the script. I remember reading it, and it was hilarious.
Best
over the top
line ever.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? And it sold for like $1 million. And this was a brand new writer, not sold anything before, so it got a lot of attention. That became American Pie. But I remember reading it before and being like, this is so over the top, crazy, ridiculous. And it got made. It was a great movie. But so how did you end up in the corporate events business? You end up basically running the Berlin Film Festival, which is not a place that a lot of people think of, running film festivals.
Yeah, no. I wasn't running the festival, but what happened was that when I realized that sort of this film script editing thing is not like the thing for me, or doesn't really pay the bills, I produced a documentary film that we managed to screen at the film festival, which made me realize we need a space where we can hang out with the whole film crew. And being the visionary entrepreneur, I then came up with, hey, let's do a festival lounge for the whole festival. And I rented a space close to the festival grounds, and had a really nice festival lounge for 10 days. And after that, I was like, hey, this was kind of fun. What about if we do this for like 365 days? And then I rented the space and had to realize that the festival takes 10 days, and then there are 355 more days in the year where you have to fill the space with something so you can pay rent and pay the employees. And so that's how I came to learn about good marketing and bad marketing, and a good product and a bad product, because during the 10 days of the festival, we had zero problem to rent out the space and sort of host 3 events per day. And it was like amazing. And then the other 355 days, we sort of scrambled by and tried to find customers who would rent the space. And that is when I understood location is all. And being able to identify your customers by, in this case, putting up the festival catalog, calling all the companies that we knew would come to the festival and say, hey, we know you're doing a premiere of this film. Do you want to rent our space? So that was a very effective direct selling strategy for the space. But for the other 355 days, you would never know who wants to do a function, presentation, team party. So it was really hard selling that.
And it was so it was kind of like an ancillary business inspired by the Berlin Film Festival, which then becomes its own business. And you 12 years, I believe you said you were in the corporate events world.
Yeah.
That business must have evolved and changed over time.
Yeah, I mean, we had to evolve, because when we realized the film industry is too small to support us over the year, and the 10 days are not enough, we started doing all kinds of events, and we had to understand the industry. How does the events industry work? And I was never in the industry, so I had no idea how to budget for catering and how to hire the whole team for the bar and all that. So I had to learn that on the job. And it was an interesting experience. Let's put it like that.
And so how did you end up discovering LinkedIn? What point in your journey did that become something that you realized was a platform that you had aptitude for?
Good question. I mean, I always liked communities and bringing people together. That is what I also liked about the event space, because we managed to bring together the whole independent film scene at the festival, and you could see that there was a community of people that kind of knew each other and that would work together and sort of always come back, gravitate to each other, and I was very intrigued when the social networks came up, A Small World in 2008 and 2006, and Facebook, and you suddenly could form these communities online. And I just loved that, and ended up building another business in 2016, 2017, where we started a community for blockchain entrepreneurs. And we ended up with 250 entrepreneurs, a very exclusive small group, but it was a community. And that took me to LinkedIn, and seeing that it's a great way to see who is available for a certain topic or who's interested in something, because that's something you can see on LinkedIn, unlike Facebook or Twitter, where you have more anonymity. So I would say that's when I came to see it is an interesting tool. But since then, it has massively evolved. And I think the past 2 or 3 years were like a huge shift for the platform.
Let's talk about the structure of a LinkedIn post and some of the things that gets attention. So I'm looking at your feed right now, and I see you have an image on almost, I think, all of your posts here. I know there's some people that don't do that. There's some people that experiment with video. Talk about some of the different things that you see that are working well these days.
Yeah, I think it's a popular question to ask what works well, and everything can work. I mean, I see people who do not do any pictures, any videos. It's just a text post, and that's all they do, and they are killing it. Then you have other people who do video that do very well. I always have an image. It's this yellow square that becomes sort of like the brand. But I think the really interesting question is, what do I need to do? Not in terms of like the format, but the rhythm and the consistency. And what I see with those people who really have a huge audience on LinkedIn, they are very consistent with their posting. People know exactly what to expect. They're very clear with who they're targeting, and usually they are very narrow, or they have a very clear focus. And they just show up every day or every week, but it's a very, very consistent thing. And if you do that, then it doesn't really matter that much whether you do video or slideshows or text posts. Yes, they do have certain advantages with like one having a wider reach than the other. But I mean, just think about Justin Welch, who's sort of one of the people that really inspired me on LinkedIn. He never does any images, but you know exactly what to expect from him. He talks to solopreneurs, and whatever he does, it's always insightful. It's always valuable. It's super consistent. And he has conditioned people to wait for his post because they know it's great. And I think the question is more like, how are you going to condition your audience to love what you do? And not sort of, should I do videos or text posts or slideshows?
Yeah. And then, so talk to me about clients that you work with that struggle with this, that aren't producing regular content on LinkedIn. How do you approach it with them? How do you, I know that the challenge would be, one, to get clients to actually produce it because they're not right now. And then one alternative would be to write it all for them. But I imagine if you do that, then it's not going to be really reflective of their voice. So exactly. How do you strike that happy medium between having it be in their voice, but also dealing with the fact that, the clients I imagine you work with are busy, they got stuff going on, they have a proven track record of not having produced content on LinkedIn. So, it's not like they're going to suddenly change.
Yeah. I mean, it's always like, if you see the value of something, you're happy to invest your time and your energy to do that. And what we often see is if people are not willing to do that on LinkedIn. They don't really see the value of what it can do. It's sort of like, yeah, we have to do it and everybody's doing it. But if they don't want to do it, they don't see the value. And what we then usually say is, hey, when was the last time you were going to some sort of convention and you sent your intern to present you to do business development? You would never do this because it's sort of like the one thing where you can go and meet potential customers and clients and socialize. And it's sort of, there's a randomness to the people that you're going to meet at a conference. And it's very similar with LinkedIn. It's a business development tool. If you play on it, if you invest the time you would invest into a conference or a convention, you will meet people that will help you develop your business. And the one thing that doesn't work, in my opinion, is if you hire somebody to write something for you, which will not be fully reflective of your personality and your voice and your humor and who you are. It's going to be maybe authoritative and informative and top-notch industry knowledge. But let's be honest. I mean, if we go to a social media platform, there's a interest in learning, but also there's an interest in being entertained and sort of have a sense for who are the other people. And that is something that I believe only you as the author can do. And so what we do is we, first of all, try to get people excited about LinkedIn to help them see how it could be a tool of business development so that they then see that they have to own it themselves because it's something you don't want to give away. And when they see that, then we can help them to develop their own unique voice and hold them accountable so that they get into rhythm of posting weekly or daily or whatever they choose. It doesn't really matter, but to really get them into the habit of doing it. And then once they see it's working, then we can leave because then they will continue doing it.
But how does that work? Like, do you get on a call with them and talk it out with them? Or do you get on a call with them and say, all right, start writing. You need to write out these stories now. I mean, How does it practically work?
Yeah, so very simple. Depending on how much they've already done on LinkedIn, we look at what they've done and we sort of take stock of where they are, what are the assets, how many followers do they have? Is there some traction or is it like a cold start? And we then basically get on a call once or twice per week, depending on how much time they want to invest, and start with them looking at what they've done and giving feedback of what they should pay attention to. And we also work through a couple of frameworks that we have not invented, we've just stolen them. But the Lean Canvas is a great tool to just capture who you are, what market you want to target, and use that as a guide to hold it against a post. Because if you write something that is not interesting to the target market that you said you want to address in the Lean Canvas, then there's no point in posting this post. So we capture a couple of core elements about the business, also with the VTO from US Division Traction Organizer, to really have a documented clarity of this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is how we do it. And then out of that, it is easy to then co-develop a content plan where we brainstorm pieces, where we show them how now to use tools like ChatGPT to pre-write these things and then really turn it into their own piece. And then we work, depending on how the client wants to do it, it's either we preview the posts and give feedback, or they just post it, and then we review what happened after they posted it and what traction they got and how it could have possibly been better.
Well, Simon, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you, check out your new podcast, follow your LinkedIn posts? Where can people go?
Guess where? LinkedIn. So they can find me on LinkedIn. If you look for Storylux on LinkedIn or for my complicated last name, Chappuzeau, there's only one guy like me. So they can easily find me. There's also a website, Storylux, but I definitely would recommend coming to the LinkedIn because that's where we have the most information and you can see the posting style and what we do.
All right. Thanks so much, Simon.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.